Hi,
Look at this one.
how are you, Professor?
I'm okay. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
So, Professor Jeff, you have no issues today with your internet?
No, we're kind of. It seems like we're back to normal. I had to. It was a big project with my landlord, but I think we're okay.
Good. So many people have issues nowadays.
It's that's what I was telling other faculty members. It's just, and you guys have heard me say it many times. This is normal now. This is just what
Yes.
happens.
Yep.
But
I'm glad.
I was stressed though. I will not lie. I can be calm now, but I was like, I was freaking out a little bit. But
I see it. I see it.
yeah.
Professor Jeff, I have a quick question about the assignment. Shall I wait until the class starts?
No, let's go for it. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about it. So please, you're here early. Let's do it. What's up?
Oh, great. So narrative assignment.
Yes.
So if I look at the course materials, there are some audio files as well as the PDF materials.
Yes.
Right. So what are the differences? Why do we have so many files?
They're just, so we're going to talk about it today, but really today I'm going to introduce the structure of the writing assignment, and we'll look at some examples and look at the examples to find out about the structure. But one thing I was thinking is just giving you guys, but I'm not going to give you assigned reading with a reading quiz or anything like this. Do you know what I mean? So my intention is to give you as many examples of narrative writing as you want. And if people have time and want to read all of them or listen to all of them, great. If people can only listen to one or two, that's great too. So it's really just to give you guys options and examples and to allow you to go as deep as you want.
Yeah. So, but what I'm sorry, but I didn't understand was why some of them are as audio files and some of them are just in PDFs.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
the real answer is that I teach a narrative book for the lower class, and all of the audio files are things I've recorded for the lower class, but I didn't make you guys buy that book. So
Oh, I see.
I wanted to ask, did you, well, since you're here, I can ask you, did you get to read through the narratives, the examples, the PDFs?
I just started and then I wasn't sure because one, I saw a map of lost things and was in both materials.
Yeah.
So that's why I wasn't sure. Oh, maybe am I looking at the wrong place? Should be there everything in audio and in PDF or not?
No, that you can if you want to. I mean, I think like everything, right? We human beings, we see the world kind of as we are. And I was the type of like overachiever student. I like to do a lot and probably do too much. So I don't mean to overwhelm you guys by giving you too much, but my idea is not to make you do things, but to give you lots of options for the students who want to go deep. Do you know what I mean?
I see.
I think the other thing I've thought about for how to make this online world we live in beneficial for you guys, and this is something I liked when I was in grad school a few years ago, is download everything. This class is for you, and then you have it. Like it's kind of my idea with the PDFs too. So if you have it, and then a year from now you want to listen to it, I think that's, and maybe no one will do that, but I think it's a way that I'm trying to make more value for this class for you guys. Beyond just the one day a week we get to meet and some of the grading and the feedback that I do. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it here.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Then all other questions I will wait until you have finished to explain it to us.
How to do it? Yeah, that's the more that's what today's all about, really.
Got it.
Gazwana, Safada, Natalia, Jay, Natasha. Hi, good to see you guys.
Hello.
Hello, Professor.
Hello. But it looks good. I was looking at stuff. It seems like this week I don't have a bunch of lessons and stuff, so I think people got to catch up a lot this week. It looks like I'm really happy with where the class is at right now. I think we're definitely ready to really just jump into the first big writing. So that I was happy to see that, or that was my opinion at least. What's up, Natalia?
I have a question about linguistic narrative invention activity.
Okay.
I've never seen it before, but now I see this is the new assignment here, like a quiz. What does it mean and what should we know for this quiz?
That's what today is all about.
Okay.
If you still don't know in 90 minutes, then I will give the full answer. But I think my goal is that all will be clear. All will be clear by the end of class today.
Yeah, and I have a question about the narrative essay.
How to do it?
Yeah, because I'm really confused. For me, narrative, as we studied in the class 320, we see different kind of essays, narrative, argumentative, and others. And for me, narrative was like in chronological order when you tell the story.
Yep. And
these topics for me doesn't look like the story, but more like maybe argumentative essay when we say why the word-to-word translation is not good, then we like it's our opinion then.
That's what today is all about.
Okay.
That's what today is all. I really wanted to start answering, but that's what we're going to do today. I'll ask you the same thing, Natalia, just because people are here. Did you read any of the example narratives that I posted in Canvas?
I haven't seen them.
Okay, perfect. Then I think that's great. If people didn't do it, then we'll really get to go through at least one of them today and use it as an example. Yeah. Cool.
Does it mean that I should be prepared for this class? And
no,
I haven't seen them. Did you add them somewhere in the files, maybe?
They're in course materials, Professor Jeff's course materials. I think I mentioned it at the end of last week, just saying, do the other lessons, but if you want to, you can start reading these. There were no lessons connected to them. I already told Tiroway, I'm not going to do a writing quiz to make you read, 5 of them or whatever. But they're there for you to see examples of this type of writing genre, because I don't want to, I mean, I disagree a little bit about the idea of an argument essay, but you're correct. This type of essay that we're going to write, or I don't know, is it an essay? I mean, whatever. It is not just a story beginning, middle, and end. It's a story with a point. It's a story with a thesis or a theme or an idea. And that is a little bit different than just, tell me a story. So today we're going to talk about how to do that and look at some examples.
Well, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
The last question about the narrative writing that you add in the course materials. I'm really confused now because yes, now I remember that you told in the end of the previous class, in the last class. But the problem is when I don't see the assigned works like somewhere in announcements or in the modules, I forget about it immediately because, because of different classes and job and children and everything. So maybe I just ask maybe if it's possible to put somewhere I don't know, maybe on modules or announcements. So today, please, for the next lesson, if you can read this, do this, like a plan.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think everyone just, how can I say, I want to be so kind and respectful because I know what a good student you are. I talk about this in the class and it's always on the last slide of the PowerPoint. That's just the way that works for me. And it's like when I try and put it in 5 different places, then I get confused about what I did and where to set things. So the other thing I want to say, Natalia, you didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? You didn't miss anything. You're not behind in any way at all.
Yeah, well, it was my mistake. I think I should review the PowerPoint slides. It will be better for me to follow them. Yeah, I forgot about it as well. I just, I listened to everything I discussed. I'm done.
I know you,
Not only
Natalia.
on modules. Yeah.
I
Sorry
know
for
you're,
this.
no, for me, there's nothing to apologize for at all. Gazvan, what's up?
Just about the narrativity,
Yep.
I just want to let you know that I already submitted the essay.
Okay.
But when I looked over it, I see there is just 2 attempts. But you said if someone can send it before the deadline, you can give him a feedback, so we can submit more than 2 or 3 times.
No, that's not true. In the syllabus, you get one time.
No. I mean, one of the Zooms, one of
Oh,
the.
then you can send it to me as an email then instead of submitting
Oh,
it in the
I
assignment
can
page.
send it.
It's all good. It's all good. I can take care of that. I don't know what else, I don't know how I'll do that, reset that for you. Well, I'll make it work. It's totally fine. Yeah, any kind of working on stuff before the due date, come to office hours or send me an email. Don't submit in I'm not even looking. I mean, I'm not even looking at anything for that in Canvas in terms of things that have been submitted for that, because it's not even due for 2 weeks, you know.
Yeah.
All good, guys. We'll make it work. It's all good.
All right, thank you. So
yeah, please.
Also it said that it should be at least 1,500 words. And you know, sometimes we cannot reach that numbers. So that's mean there's a 15 points on that number.
Correct.
That's mean we're not gonna get that points?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, this is 350, guys. I don't care if you get 15 points, even if it's just a crazy mess, you know what I mean? But I put that in there to push you, right? To push, you got to push. That's the whole idea. That's the whole
yeah, I can do it, but I don't want to do it.
And if you don't want to, that's fine. You can still get an 85 out of 100. But yeah, if you want to get 100, you gotta, you know, you gotta hit the number. Yeah, Fada, what's up?
So do you have the tutor or this kind of stuff, someone for tutoring or?
No tutor for this class. All right, maybe we just have a little tiny baby class today. We only got a few people, but I think it's 12:25 or 12:22, and there's a lot of stuff I want to cover. So I think we should just go for it.
So one more thing, if you don't mind, sir.
No, please.
About the narrative quiz. Yeah, actually, I just opened it. I couldn't understand what you should read to answer this question.
Yep.
There was 9 questions.
Yep. That's what we're doing today.
Well, okay, thank you.
Yep. Like I said to Natalia, I think, and Hiroe, if you still have these questions in 90 minutes, then I have failed today. But I think the lesson I've got for us that will answer all of your very appropriate, reasonable questions for today.
All right.
I'll do my best. Okay, cool. So just like usual, you guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Cool.
Nice.
Yes. Oh my God. Any way to try and soothe myself, you guys. Oh, this isn't correct. I need to get rid of this. Yeah, that's it. All right, so just like usual, I do want to do a small group check-in. We might just do like 2 groups because we have so few people. But here are the questions that I want you to talk about with each other. I think it's really important for you guys to talk to each other at least a little bit. So here's my 3 questions for you guys to talk in your groups. 1, did you read any of the narratives this week? If not, why not? And it sounds like for some people it was, I didn't know where they were, or I didn't know I was supposed to. Totally appropriate. That's totally fine. If so, which ones? What did you think about it? What did you notice? And if people didn't find them or didn't have the time or anything like that, that's fine. Just talk about whatever you want. You could talk about anything connected to narratives or anything connected to this assignment. Okay? Cool.
Okay.
Thank you, Sama. Write the questions down. Be ready to share with your groups. We're just going to do 2 groups. So I'm going to open the rooms in 1 second. Let's do 2 rooms, 4 people each room. Sounds great. All right, rooms are opening now. Since we have small groups, such a small class, I'll give you about 10 minutes today, okay? And I'm here if you need me. I'll see you in a few minutes. Hello. How about we're in small groups, so if you can hear me and you can talk, I'll send you to one of the rooms. If you can't, you can just keep yourself muted and hang out in the main room. Everyone will be back in about 5 minutes.
Yes, I hear you.
Welcome back.
You.
Thank you.
Little shorty, little 10 minutes today. The other room is still going. Cool, we're all coming back in. All right, we are back. So I do want to do a sort of really quick, sort of little short warm up, just a chance to talk about anything that you guys talked about. I'm sorry, hold on, I'm gonna mute everybody. I don't know who's watching TV or something. All right, so when it's your time or when you do want to speak, please unmute yourself, but I've got everybody muted right now. So the warm-up is just a sort of way to introduce some of these ideas, and if anything came up in your small groups that you do want to talk about or ask a question about, please. But here's the sort of opening discussion for us. One, what do you already know about narrative writing? Natalia sort of shared some of that at the beginning of class for folks who weren't here. Two, what do you remember about examples of narrative writing that you've read in the past? And then the third one, if you did read one of the example essays, what did you notice? So these are, again, just some suggestions to get us going, but I do want to have a sort of quick group discussion about these questions or anything that came up in your groups. So what do we got? Usama, please go for it. And then Gazwan. Unmute yourself. We still can't hear you. Can't hear you. Don't know what's going on with the muting. Maybe try chatting and put it in the chat, Usama. And anybody who also doesn't want to
Now
speak.
you hear
Oh,
me?
there we go. There we go. Yeah.
Yes, I read two stories.
Okay.
I read Anne May, and
Okay.
I know this writer. I read some beautiful story. The story has been made as a film. It
Okay.
is The Joy Luck Club.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one about her mother tongue.
Yes.
I could sense his feeling.
Mm.
He explained that each of us has not one language. Each of us has many languages.
Mm.
In our home, we spoke in a language. In a school, we spoke in different language. In the market, with friends, each group of people or each field has its own language, its own tongue. So she understand her mother, but maybe a lot of people couldn't understand her mother. And her mother read everything, but maybe can't be understandable from others.
Right.
Also, I read about the writer Faith Adele, anthropology of myself, and this one also very interested one. This one is about a student who got a scholarship from Harvard to make anthropology study for the Buddhism.
Yes.
But her mission changed to be to study the anthropology of herself, how that change is going on in her experiment. And the experiment was very, very tough, very hard.
Mm.
I don't believe there is a lot of people cannot proceed this experiment. But she was astonished from herself.
Mm.
She changed to be a nun, a Buddhist nun,
Mm-hmm.
of studying the anthropology of
Love it.
Buddhism.
Love it.
She changed to study herself anthropology.
Good. I'm glad that you read them both. So again, I put it in the chat, but both of the stories that Usama's talking about are on the course materials page. He was talking about Amy Tan, the author of the Joy Luck Club. That's a full novel, right? That's a full book. This one's a shorter essay called Mother Tongue. And then Faith Adele's Anthropology of Myself. I'll just confess, that's my favorite one on the list. So I'm happy that someone read it. That's one of my favorite stories, examples here. But I mean, I love them all, but I really do love that story. So I want to say one quick thing about what Usama did there, which is he kind of got at the idea that we're going to talk about today in my slide, and that we'll look at the example together, which is this type of narrative writing is more than just a story with beginning, middle, end, right? Usama sort of talked about this woman went to Harvard, then she traveled to a foreign country. She wanted to study Buddhism. She had this challenge. She did this thing, right? Beginning, middle, and end. That's the story. But for both examples that Usama was talking about there, he said he could feel something, some meaning, some deeper feeling that was personal or important to the narrative, right? And in this case, to the writer. And that, and I'm thinking again of Natalia's great question from the beginning of class, is kind of what we're doing here. It's not just a narrative, because a narrative doesn't have to have a theme or a thesis or a main idea. A narrative can just be, we did this, we did that, then that, the end, right? This type of writing is a story with some deep personal feeling that the writer wants the reader to understand. And I think even in describing some of that, Usama kind of got at that idea. And again, we're going to look at this for the rest of class today. Anybody else, anything about narrative or about the examples or anything else they want to add or that they shared about with their group?
I can speak about myself that I am a reader, a professional reader, but in my first language, in Arabic, I read all the Tolstoy work. I read all the Tolstoy work, for example. Yes.
Perfect. Great. Okay, great. So again, that was even if no one else wants to speak or write anything in the chat, that's fine. Usama did kind of introduce the idea that we're going to practice today, right? A narrative is a story with a beginning, middle, and end. The type of narratives that we're going to read and that I'm asking you to write are personal narratives with some deeper theme, some deeper meaning, some deeper, like I said, call it a thesis, call it a main idea, call it something. It's more than just beginning, middle, and end to a story. Cool, so let's do it. So here's this genre, right? What is a linguistic narrative, or maybe a cultural narrative, or a family narrative, or a personal narrative, right? This type of narrative writing, you could organize it around a lot of different sort of topics, right? But because we're talking about language and thinking about language and translation as a way to talk about culture, right? That's why I'm calling this a linguistic narrative. So here is what I'm talking about when I say linguistic narrative. So a linguistic narrative is a type of creative or academic writing that expresses the relationship between the writer's identity and their language. Now, if this said cultural narrative, you could say writer's identity and their culture, right? Usama was talking about Faith Adele. She goes to a Buddhist retreat. So we could say a religious narrative. So the writer's identity and their religion, right? So whatever topic we choose or you choose to write about or the writer chooses to write about, that's fine. But the idea here is how this part of them and their past, their history, this story intersects with their own identity. right? So in this case, again, a linguistic narrative is a type of creative or academic writing that expresses the relationship between the writer's identity and their language. The objective, the goal in this type of writing is to show the reader how the story being told is directly related to issues of language and culture. So the writer does this through narrative. That means telling a story. They introduce a theme, they describe their thoughts, feelings, and experiences, and then return to this theme throughout the narrative. The author introduces a theme. They introduce a theme. I'm checking my grammar here, and then return, not returning. So they do this. They introduce a theme, describe their thoughts, feelings, and experiences, and then return to this theme throughout the narrative. That's kind of like the big picture idea of what a linguistic narrative is. Now you see that I've put these three words into different colors because this type of writing, again, has sort of three, I want to be careful here, like types of writing. Now that doesn't mean, you know, each sentence, you know, in a narrative like this, okay, one sentence is about the theme and the next sentence is only an example of narrative writing and the next one is just a description. You all know at 350, that's not the idea, right? But these different sort of flavors of writing all come through in this type of essay. So narrative, theme, and descriptive writing. So we'll look at that. So a theme, and this is the structure. So this is the organizing, the way to organize and think about how to go about, how to do this type of writing. So the theme is introduced early in the writing. It is usually returned to throughout the writing. There are usually key words, ideas, or images that are also repeated throughout the writing. And this is often synthesized, summarized, echoed at the end of the writing. Now again, we're going to see an example of this in a moment, but I want to introduce these ideas. Then within a narrative, the structure here is narrative writing. So this is probably what you're used to. If you took 320, 340, whatever, you're used to narrative writing. Narrative writing, particularly with this type of essay, is I or we, right? It's a personal essay. So you are going to be using the first person pronoun here. You're using this first person pronoun throughout the writing, and you're telling a story throughout the writing. And as the third bullet point here is, you're telling a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the difference here between just a flat out narrative, like I've already said a few times, the story must have a clear connection to the theme, right? So yeah, that's all I want to say for now. Last one. Then there is descriptive writing. Now, descriptive writing is really a part of any good narrative, right? Because if you're telling a good story, you do need to have some description. So descriptive writing is used throughout the writing. It uses, it should be uses, huh? It's better tense, I think. Uses a lot of specific details connected to the 5 senses. So in your story, what did it look like? What did it sound like? Can you describe with good detail what was happening during this narrative? And when you use these specific details connected to the 5 senses, this allows the reader to really see the things that are part of the narrative. And this may be used to help connect the story with the theme. But this is a little bit more of an advanced idea. This idea of using descriptive writing to connect to the theme has to do with, on this slide, where I'm saying things like keywords, ideas, and images, right? But again, I think with most of these 3 things, it's important to introduce them, get this language in your mind, and then look at an example together. So again, the theme, introduce it at the beginning, and it's the heart and soul of the writing, like Usama was saying. It's what makes the reader feel something. Narrative writing, story, maybe more than one story, beginning, middle, and end, and it has, I'll say this many times, has to clearly be connected to the theme. And descriptive writing is just a way to make your narrative writing good, is a way to make your narrative writing interesting. And I think everybody knows or has someone in their family who, when they tell a story, you know, maybe they're not great storytellers. You love them, right? But it's not a lot of good specific information. There's kind of no point to the story. And you go, okay, like, I don't know what the point of that story was. So narrative and descriptive writing help make sure that the theme, the reason for telling the story, comes through. Does this make sense? theme, narrative, and descriptive writing. Because if not, I'm just going to go straight into the example here. So if these ideas are unclear, theme, narrative, and descriptive, speak now. Usama, go for it.
This is what our essay will be.
This is the big picture structure of your essay. Now, there are lots of different ways to do this, as you see, right, Usama? I'm saying that mother tongue and, well, I'm not saying they are. Mother tongue and anthropology of myself are both examples of personal narratives, right? But they're organized and structured in very different ways. But both of them, you know, all of the things that I've posted in Canvas on the course materials page follow this structure, right? Now, personal style, that's one thing. We can talk about that, but this is the structure. This is the structure. Any other questions?
Are you going to send us this?
PowerPoint, always. You know, everything I ever show you lives on the live support materials page. It's not there yet, but yeah, if you go to the home page and if you go to live support materials, that's where you'll find this recording. So for the people who aren't here, we miss you. You're missing a really important one, but make sure you watch this video. And the PowerPoint will be there, just like always, just like always.
In the PowerPoint here, in this.
Of course, always,
Oh.
always. That's what I was saying to Hiroe. So even if people don't have time or can't watch at the beginning of class, it's there for you forever. Download it. You know, you'll 5 years from now, you'll be looking at these beautiful PowerPoints. You know, any other questions about this structure before we practice? Okay, and here's what we're going to do. In the chat, I'm going, so you can do this a few different ways, but in the chat right now, I'm going to post a file. The file is the story that we're going to look at together today. Bear with me. Thank you for your patience. Sorry, you guys. The Zoom, the way to post a file in Zoom is not as nice and neat as I thought it would be. There we go. ARC G3. No, we're in G350. And live support and classroom today. There we go. Okay, I just posted this into the chat. So if you open the chat, you should be, not just yet, you should be able to see and download this yourself in just a moment. You can also access this example in Canvas if you go to, again, home page. Course materials, and scroll down to narrative writing. And this is the one we're going to look at together. Jamila Osman, A Map of Lost Things. So you can download it here. You can download it from the chat. Lots of different ways to find it. Really, I'm going to just go through this story. I'm going to take the time to read the story. So you can follow along with me on the screen. You can turn off your video and just listen. You can project the PDF that I just sent in the chat and read along with me, however you want to do it. But I am going to take the time to go through it. And I think all I really want you to do while I do this is to really pay attention and notice as I read this, where do you see these things happening, right? Like if you look at a page or a paragraph, I think sentence by sentence is kind of exhausting and too specific. But where do you notice these structures that I'm talking about? Where do you see them in the story? Where do you see her talking about the theme? Where do you see her using narrative writing? Can you find any examples of really descriptive writing that you think are interesting or that you want to talk about, right? So as I'm reading, that's all I want you to do. Any questions about what we're doing here? Love it. So as I'm reading again, notice theme, notice narrative writing, notice descriptive writing, and then I'm going to put you back in your groups when we're done. So be prepared to talk about, on this page, this was a good example of her talking about the theme. Or on this page, there was a great descriptive writing. I could really feel all the details, okay? So again, however you need to do that. If you want to write things down on a piece of paper, if you want to follow along on your own screen, turn off your video, whatever you need to do. But I do want you to be ready to talk about it in groups. Cool? All right, let's go. And for now, because it is just going to be me for a little while, I am going to mute everybody. If I can remember how to use Zoom, my brain is a little mushy today. Okay, all muted. I'll talk to you all again after we finish the story. All right. So, A Map of Lost Things by Jamila Osman. When I was in the 4th grade in Portland, we spent 3 months studying the Chinook salmon, the Oregon state fish. Our unit culminated in a class field trip to a small creek off the Columbia River Gorge. At Eagle Creek, a small basin where the Columbia River runs into the Pacific, the Chinook salmon comes to spawn, having crossed thousands of miles of sea in a journey that takes many years. When the female salmon finds her way back to the same estuary of her birth, she will lay anywhere from 3,000 to 14,000 eggs before dying. The estuary is where the river meets the sea. It is the collision of 2 worlds. It is where the new world meets the old world, where life crashes headfirst into death. Death is always the final act. As we watched the salmon return to the estuaries they'd left so many years ago, I was filled with a jealousy that hollowed out my chest. I envied the salmon and their bloated bodies, the way they shimmered under the water when the sun's rays caught against their scales. I have returned to this same creek many times as an adult, and I still feel the same sense of jealousy I felt at 9 years old. I sit on the wet earth and hold my knees against my chest as I watch the salmon spawn. On clear nights at the creek, the moon floats just over the surface of the water. The landscape is blurred and distorted, hazy and untrue in the mirror of the water. I look at the moon against the river and feel a hunger crest in me. The salmon return at the same time every year, haggard, gray, molten. I envy the certainty of their journey. Sometimes I run into hikers and tourists as I walk the trail to the creek. Where are you from? They will inevitably ask me. Portland? I answer their question with a question of my own. Portland? My last syllable lifts its head in desire. Nobody leaves home thinking they will never be able to return. I wonder what my parents would have taken with them when they left their home in Somalia in the late 80s. Who might they have made amends with? What old haunts would they have visited one last time if they knew they would never be back? My parents ended up in Oregon, and by the time I was in middle school, we'd already lived in 5 different apartment complexes. When my teachers would ask me where I was from, I would shrug. I'd already learned that to be part of a diaspora was to live freely, to make no promises. In phone calls to faraway relatives, my parents always swore they would return. But distance and time make liars of us all. It was not that my family disliked Portland. We loved many things about the city, especially its spring days, warm and wet, but it was a cautious love. My parents had loved the place once before, and neither of them had ever fully recovered from the war that had leveled Somalia in the early 90s or its aftermath. How could they recover? War is not a cough, it is a cancer. The Somali government officially collapsed in 1991. My parents, abroad at the time, found themselves unable to return. Newly married, my mother pregnant with me, they lived for a brief time in Canada. During their first winter in Edmonton, there was a devastating snowstorm. My mother had never seen snow before. Her lips and knuckles were always bleeding in the cold. Everything in this new world was a small wound. My father, previously a student, had become a cab driver in this new country. It didn't take him long before he no longer needed to use a map to take people to the places they needed to go, banks and doctor's appointments, hair salons and shopping malls. Soon he knew his way around Alberta so well that if he didn't speak with an accent, one would have thought he was born and raised there. He knew which roads to take and which to avoid. He knew the fastest route to the airport and where to find the back roads when the city closed around him like a fist. My father always kept an atlas in the glove compartment of our family's minivan. Before road trips, he would pull it out and lay it flat on the dashboard, showing us where we were going. He would run a finger back and forth between small streets and major roads, rivers and borders. My younger sister, Ayan, and I would fight over who would get the privilege of unfolding the map for him. When it was my turn, I savored the crinkle of the parchment and the slow blooming of the world in front of me. Maps held a type of magic for my father. In our living room, he would pull out world maps, dragging a finger through an ocean, point to Saudi Arabia and say, "This is where my mother is." Other times, he would point to where his aunts and uncles and various cousins lived, Somalia, India, Denmark, Canada, hundreds and thousands of miles apart, but neighboring countries in his heart. My father knew how to get everywhere. It was what we always admired most about him. But even he who could name the capitals of countries all over the world could never figure out how to get back home. After 4 years in Alberta, my parents lived in Portland in 1986. They cobbled together a life and gave birth to 4 more children. They did their best to raise us in a way they no longer recognized. Portland was nothing more than the city in which we lived until it became suddenly and without warning the city in which my sister died. The day after her funeral, my mother and I sat on the couch holding hands. "This was never supposed to be home," she said through her tears. "But Ayana's here. How can we ever leave?" We buried my sister and we put down roots. Grief transforms the topography. On a map, I can point to the intersection where the car accident took my sister's life, the street where the funeral home is located, the cemetery where she's buried. But a map doesn't show the blood pooling on the pavement, the glass scattered at the edge of the road, the skid marks, the acrid smell of burning rubber. A map does not proclaim that the United States is Indian country, occupied land. On a map, someone can trace a finger from one anglicized city name to another and forget these lands were and are known by other names. Maps are a polite fiction. They never tell the whole story. They don't mark important things like graves or genocides. 30 years after the ousting of British and Italian colonial forces from Somalia, a civil war erupted, a volcano turning the country to ash. The northern region declared itself an autonomous state called Somaliland. "We are our own country," they proclaimed as the war raged on. They drew the cloak of British borders tight around themselves. When the colonists came, they committed our edges to paper. They tried to cage us with their borders. A country is impossible to contain. A people are impossible to boil to the silt of parchment. A map is only one story. It is not the most important story. The most important story is the one a people tell about themselves. I visit Hargeisa, capital of Somaliland, for the first time in 2012. The northern region of Somalia had remained relatively stable and peaceful since the mid-90s, even as the southern region was besieged by al-Shabaab and US drone strikes. I imagine my parents' first airplane ride, their racing hearts and quick breathing. Maybe they dug their fingers into their thighs, their nails making half moons on their skin. I'm not the first to cross an ocean in search of something elusive and intangible. I think of the war and the period of mass exodus when everyone who was able to flee the country left. Only those who were too poor or too old or too full of hope stayed behind. Hope makes children of us all foolish and reckless and devout. Hargeisa is not what I expect it will be, but the things we wait the longest for seldom are. The city is dry and the air crackles. The dirt is fine and coats clothes and skin. The trees are scraggly and flimsy. Everywhere I look, there are buildings collapsing in on themselves, piles of concrete and empty houses. Hargeisa is the city of my mother's birth, the city where my grandmother cut her teeth on the rough realities of womanhood. My grandmother, who lived with us for a few years in Portland before moving back home because she missed it so much, shows me around the city. She is embarrassed by the men in FC Barcelona shirts and the way they shuffle, dragging donkeys down dirt roads, hustling lukewarm water in enormous canteens. She is embarrassed by the piles of trash that stink in the blazing heat of a Hargeisa afternoon. It is an embarrassment that is tempered by her love for this place. Even here, in the land of my ancestors, I wear my foreignness like an ill-fitting dress. When I go to the market with my grandmother, shopkeepers leer at me and call me the American girl. I wonder what part of my body has betrayed me. I wonder in what way I am branded. They wink at me and wave their products in my face. Spend your American dollars here. Somalis call those of us who return to visit Dakan Salis. It is a story in two parts. Dakan means culture. Salis is a return. We are a roving tribe of wanderers, scattered siblings, lost youth, reluctant expatriates, victims of impossible and auspicious circumstances. Everyone looks at us like we are lost. They ask us what we've come to find. We have no answers. A body always returns to the place that shaped it. A body always returns to its ghosts. For years, scientists have speculated as to how salmon find their way back to their natal streams. One widely accepted hypothesis states that when salmon are young, they imprint the pattern of Earth's magnetic field where they are born. Years later, this memory serves as an internal GPS. The last stretch of a salmon's journey is the most dangerous. The closer it gets to home, the more perilous the trek becomes. Sailors used to call salmon the leaping fish. They launch their bodies over entire waterfalls and sometimes land directly in the mouths of waiting bears. Today, the Chinook salmon is on the endangered species list. Fluctuating sea temperatures, man-made dams, and declining water levels make the journey home nearly impossible. Every spring, fish biologists report increasingly high numbers of salmon carcasses in local rivers. According to a study conducted by scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Oregon salmon are slowly being pushed north toward Alaska as a direct result of climate change. As ocean temperatures continue to rise, salmon will seek out waters that better mirror the conditions to which they're adapted. In time, some species of salmon may disappear completely from the Pacific Northwest. In the summer of 2015, 1 year after my sister's death, my parents, my 4 siblings, and I took a trip back to Edmonton, Alberta. Canada is our shared ground zero, my family's original sin. My father has made the trip enough times that he's committed the route to memory. There's no need to consult a map. I now wonder if maps have lost their magic for him, if he too has recognized that the places to which we are most desperate to return might not exist at all. Driving south on US 95, we come to a small stretch of unincorporated land between the United States and Canada. I ask my father to pull over, and I get out of the car. I cry on the side of the road. I am mourning my sister, our shared childhood, the unfamiliarity of the world that now beckons me forward. 1 foot in Canada, 1 in the United States. I am a woman like the women before me, legs spread indecently, straddling worlds, caught between cities and countries and continents. On that strip of land between the 2 countries, I realize I have always belonged everywhere at once, on the road, in liminal spaces, in the disputed territory between Somalia and Ethiopia, where my father spent the ragged days of his youth. I've always belonged at the beginning of the world and where it seems to end, where the sky meets the sea, where the sea meets the land, on a plane where the two become indistinguishable from each other and you can no longer tell if you are going home or leaving it. Where are you from? People still ask me, but the answer is not simple. I am from a place beyond the scope of any map or road atlas. I am from a house of borrowed things, a land of irreconcilable and devastating losses, a terrain marked by grief. I am from nomads who moved in search of water, carving a home wherever they ended up, like water carves its shape into rock. I am from a wild hope, a blinding courage, a blur and madness uncharted by any cartographer. I am from a land unmapped and entirely my own. When I visit Somaliland for the first time, I stay long enough to imagine I will be there forever. Friends from Portland call me and ask me when I will return home. Their questions jar me. As I pack to leave, my grandmother asks me to stay with her. I tell her I will return soon. We're always making promises we cannot keep. Go or stay, either way, something is lost. Home is not an answer to a question. It is my grandmother's front porch, where I first saw how dark the night was supposed to be. It is the swimming pool in our first apartment complex in Portland, where I learned to see without looking, underwater with my eyes closed, like the mermaid I knew I was. It is the spot where my sister is buried. It is Eagle Creek, where the salmon spawn and then die, using their last reserve of energy to protect their eggs. The journey home is arduous. Surviving costs something. Returning costs something more. Will I return to the creek when the Chinook salmon no longer swim in these too warm waters? These days, the creek fills me with sadness, as fewer and fewer salmon survive the journey each year. The world is changing, and I am trying not to be leveled by it. I'm trying to find my place in it. A part of me will always be the girl who watched the salmon return, even when there comes a day when they do not. Where my sister used to be, there is only her memory. Soon, where the salmon used to spawn, there will only be their ghosts. To love a thing is to steel yourself against its eventual absence. I am learning to mourn a thing before it is lost. 2 months after I get my driver's license, my parents finally let me drive to my friend Sarah's house alone. She doesn't live far away, and I won't need to take a highway to get there. It is winter, and it gets dark early. I promise them I'll be home before the sun sets. On my way home, I take a wrong turn. I do not realize it until I find myself in a part of Portland I do not recognize. At night, the city is strange and unfamiliar, cloaked in its own uncertainty. The fog swallows what little light my car pitches against the dark. I look around for a landmark, a breadcrumb, anything that will lead me home, but I find nothing. I'm always getting lost. I think it is because I have no point of reference. My heart can't spin itself like a top and tell me what direction to go in. I'm 16 and easily roused to panic. I call my father. I put him on speaker and leave the phone on my lap as I continue to take wrong turn after wrong turn. My grip on the steering wheel tightens. I begin to cry as soon as I hear his voice. I'm stuttering and my words tumble over one another in their haste to get out of my mouth. I hear my mother in the background. Is she crying? What happened? Is she okay? I hear her decibel level rising with each question. My father has always been the calm to my mother's wild panic. Are you driving? He asks. Pull over. I pull into the parking lot of an abandoned building. I tell him I am lost. He asks me for the name of the street I'm on and then instructs me to wait in my car with the doors locked. I do as he asks, and eventually he pulls up beside me in the battered white minivan we have had for way too long. I roll down my window and snivel. Follow me, he says, and I do. I follow him all the way home. So I'm going to pause for just a second, take a moment. I am going to put you back in your groups, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk about the story, the narrative. And after a few minutes, I'm going to come in and talk to each group. But really what I just want you guys to do is talk to each other about the story. And if you want to just start with what did you like? What did you not like? How do you feel? I get emotional with some of these stories. I think it's beautiful. I mean, I love it. So just take your time, talk to each other as human beings. And then after you talk to each other as human beings, I think this is a great example of theme, narrative, and description, right? So again, start with your heart and then move on to your brain. You know, start with your heart and then move on to what do you notice about the structure of this story? I don't expect you guys to be able to write a story like this, but I know all of you have some kind of story like this, right? All of us have some kind of story that's about something really deep and real and personal to us. and we can connect these ideas of the big picture theme to things that seem like a very little story. And I guess I'd say, if you're still thinking, Jeff, what are you talking about? Think about that story about her getting lost coming home in her car, right? Like that could be a very simple story. I was driving, I got lost, I called my dad, he came to find me. That's a narrative. I'm thinking of Natalia. That's a narrative. I was driving, I got lost, I called my dad, he came to help me home. But you see, in this type of narrative, it becomes something much more personal, right? Much more important, much more meaningful when we connect it to this bigger picture of a theme, right? So that's it. And I'd say the same thing. If this story made you feel big feelings and made you feel emotional, take a second when you get in your group, write them in the chat. Hey, I need a minute. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Okay, you guys. So I'm going to put you in your groups. You don't have to say anything right now. Like I said, talk to each other for about 5 minutes or so, and then I'll come in and we can talk about the school part of it as well. Okay, so give me just one more second to open the breakout rooms. All right, the rooms are open. Ahmad, I'm going to put you in room 1. Natasha, I'm going to put you in group 2. And Hala, I think you are in group 2 as well.
Professor,
Tell me.
every time I have a problem with the sound, I lose the sound and then I leave the meeting and then I come because I'm losing the sound.
I don't know. I've never tried it before, but sometimes it's better if people call in with their phone when it says, "Do you want to join with computer audio?" I'm not sure. Let me send you back while you're, if you go back in now, your sound will be back. Is that what happens?
Yeah, if I leave and then I come back, the sound is good. Like,
Let me,
come again.
I'll send you back in there while, and then I'll just Google really quickly. I'll see if I can find any information about that online. If I find anything, I'll send you a link because I'm not sure, but let me do that, okay?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we'll see. And you were in group 2, right?
Yes.
With Usama. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, we'll pray for your sound and let me see if I can get more information.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Room 2 is still talking. I'm going to share my screen while we're waiting for everybody to come back. Great. All right, we've got everybody back. Well, it was just a great, absolute pleasure and joy to get to talk to you guys in your groups and hear you talk about this story. Again, I think I told both groups you guys are going to love poetry and literary analysis because a lot of you already went to the symbols, which is what I like to do too. And I just want to make sure for at the beginning of class, people who are saying, Jeff, how are we going to do this writing assignment? I think for this first writing assignment, my intention is to show you the structure of this type of writing, right? I trust you guys to get to the symbols and the meaning and the theme. I know you know how to go there. But I do want to, you know, it's my job to teach you, you know, how to write some of this stuff. So I do want to say before, I think with the last 10 minutes, I want to spend some time talking about the assignment, the invention activity, how to start doing this on your own. But I would love to hear from people in the chat or anyone who wants to unmute themselves. I just want to put a short list together, a sort of way for you to start to do this type of analysis we're talking about here, how to analyze a narrative for theme, a narrative writing and descriptive writing, just so that we see an example of how to do that analysis, especially for our classmates who aren't here today. So anybody jump in, unmute yourself, put in the chat. Let's start with the theme. Remember, themes are words, images, or ideas that are introduced at the beginning. They keep coming back through the whole story, and usually they get summed up or synthesized at the end. What was the theme for this story? You guys want to go ahead?
Actually, our group, we all say that it's a home, lost parents, identity, identify and summer.
Great.
We chose these 4 words for the theme.
Love it. I'm going to change parents just to family because we do have parents, her grandmother, we have her sister. There is this idea of, now, again, we could get more specific about each individual member of her family. Absolutely, guys, one. But I think there is this, remember, theme is kind of like the biggest of the big picture in the story. So I think I'm going to just change it to family. Anybody else want to add anything to home, identity, family? And maybe we can add here, if family is the word, then we have the image. The image might be sister, parents, grandma, etc. Right? Good. Anybody else want to add to the theme? Usama, go ahead. You're muted.
The theme, the ID of the human. There is several IDs. There is the some part of the ID in Somalia, part of the ID in America, and part of it in Canada. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, identity, or maybe we could even say national identity. Maybe that is definitely a theme. And the way that this theme, to use one of the words that Fada and Hiroe used in the different groups, the symbol for some of these things of identity could be the symbol of Canada, the symbol of the US, the symbol of Somalia. Absolutely. I'm just checking the chat right now.
Or Canada, each place.
Hold on one second. Relationships and friends. Good. I love Natalia's adding relationships and friends. That's interesting too. Family relationships. And maybe relationships could even go, there's that moment where she talks about her friends in Portland and she's driving to a friend's house when she gets lost. Really, really nice. And how about the home? I think there are 2 big symbols for home in this story. What are they?
The Selborn.
Yep. And
And
Map.
the
Yep.
map.
Love it. You guys
And
were
map?
together. Yep, almost exactly together. Yeah, I think the salmon and the map are the most common, S-A-I spelled it wrong. The most frequent images that both keep coming back up, right? The beginning of the story says, I went to the creek to see the salmon. Then in the middle of the story, there's this section about the salmon again, and they're going extinct because of global warming. And then she ends, close to the end, we get the salmon again, absolutely. And again, the map keeps coming back. And even, of course, if you look at the title of the story, there's the map of lost things. Great. How about narrative? We have a lot of different examples of narrative in this story, but any example of beginning, middle, and end stories inside of this one story?
The story of the how to find places, this procedure.
Okay. Anybody else? Can we be more specific? There's 2 or 3 that I think are really clear examples of stories with beginning, middle, and end.
I was thinking about the salmon, that it is launched to the open water to unknown and then finding home.
Good. And I'll just say the journey of the salmon. I do think she says the salmon start here, they go to the estuary, they jump. She does sort of say where beginning, middle, and end, right? And then of course we understand it's a symbol for her own search. But yeah, the journey of the salmon, what happens with the salmon. I do think that's a story with a beginning, middle, and end. Ahmad, what you got? I saw you.
Yes, actually, I was thinking of the same thing. And in addition to that one, the timing, I would say, would be a part of the narrative.
Just what year? She says it was this year. I was in 4th grade. Or great. Excellent. Yeah, Fada was sort of pointing that out as well, right? Usama, and then yeah, please, and then I'm going to suggest show you some things. Osama? What do you got?
The story of the death of her sister. Actually happened.
I don't think we really get that story, Osama. I think she tells us that it happened, but that's different than telling a story. I'm going to show you the 2 examples that I'm thinking of to see if this helps make it clear.
Yeah.
At the very end, we get this story of I was driving on my way to my friend's house. I got lost. I called my dad. He came. I followed him home. That's a kind of story. Or the story of her first visit to Somalia. I'd never been to Somalia. I got on a plane. I landed. I saw the dusty city. I saw my grandma. I packed my bag. I went home, right? Like now, this is what Ahmad was saying, that the structure can change here. And that's why it gets more complex, because she kind of breaks these stories up, right? It's not all, 4 paragraphs all about the one story, but they kind of get woven together throughout the story, the whole narrative, right? The whole narrative itself. So the journey of the salmon has a beginning, middle, and end. The story of her getting lost in Portland has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The story of her first visit to Somalia has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yeah.
So the identification crisis as well, I felt somewhere, Professor.
Yeah. Now this is where I think that's closer to theme, Fada, because at no point does she say, I had an identity crisis, right? My step 1 of my identity crisis was blah, blah, blah. We understand that that's, again, remember, theme is like the big umbrella that kind of covers everything underneath it. So I think you're exactly correct. The big umbrella, this narrative is about identity and home, totally. But then what are the individual stories that she uses to explain?
So for example, where from that they've 2-3 times frequently reported that, oh, where are you from, and what's that story?
Good, I love it. Yeah, so I think the people asking her where she is from is part of this salmon story. I went to the creek, I watched the salmon.
Yeah.
When I was at the creek, these people came up and they asked me questions. And again, I want to be careful here. You're amazing students, so you're going to be like, well, what was this? Was this narrative writing? Was this descriptive writing? The real answer in good writing is they all go together. But I do want to, I think it's useful to break it apart just a little bit to sort of see how the parts connect together. So I saw Hala. Yes, I saw your hand. Please go ahead.
I think all stories has like in the beginning, like the event, the first event, like when we talk about the story, it's like normal. And then in the middle of the story, the events are like rising, like many things occur in the middle of the story, right? And then in the end of the story, we like I don't know, the events like not rising because we find the answer, we find the solution. I think all the stories like this.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like
I think she, sorry, it's
Yeah,
Natasha. I think she's talking about the climax in the story, like when it's arising yeah,
Yes,
it's a
yes.
correct word, yeah? Correct word.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
And what I'm trying to point out is this one narrative, there is a climax to the whole story, right?
Climax.
So
Okay.
the climax to the whole story is in the way that she structured this essay, the climax is the story about her getting lost in Portland, right? But what I'm trying to explain and make clear is inside of the whole narrative, inside of the whole essay, there are multiple examples of story with a beginning, a middle, and end, with a rising action and then a climax, right? The story of her going to Somalia has a climax by itself. She goes home and she says, oh, well, I'll see you again. And she knows she won't, right? Like that's the climax to the end of the Somalia story. Or what's the climax to the end of her getting lost in Portland? Her dad shows up and says, follow me home, right? I know, yeah, that's all I want to say about that. That's all I want to say about that. Natasha, you want to add anything? I saw Hiro's hand too.
No, it's interesting. So it's in one short story, there's 3 short stories. Inside of the story, there's
That's
like three small stories.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm suggesting. That's what I'm suggesting, that in this type of essay, that in this type of writing, you can use multiple examples of narratives, 2 or 3 different stories, and when they come together, they create this bigger theme. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you don't have to worry about this. If you're like, oh my God, Jeff, I don't know how I'm going to tell one, just tell one. That's fine.
I have some addition about description. In the beginning, she talked about the way, how the salmon goes to find their place, blah, 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 how they, it's the description of their salmon story. Also in the summary, they talking about their how mom was upset, how her mom was upset, how their countries look like, how the city looks like, it's dirty and everything. It's,
oh, yeah.
It's a description of their family story, and also when she lost in the Portland,
Yes.
there is a description how the streets look like, how she called father. It's another description of the small story.
Love it, love it, love it. Details about being lost, the streets. Great, absolutely fantastic. I love those examples, Natasha, of different examples of description. Hiro, I saw your hand, and I know we could talk about this for hours, but I do want to make sure I leave the last 5 minutes to tell you what the assignment is. Hiro, go ahead. You're good?
No, good.
So we will get to practice more of this next week, everybody. And so I know I kind of finished this quickly at the end here, but this is in Canvas for you to review this sort of list of the structure. And we'll get to do more analysis of this, these different, the 3 aspects of narrative writing. We'll get to do that next week as well. But I do want to make sure with the last 5 minutes, I show you sort of what I'm asking you to do. So to get ready for the writing assignment, what I suggest you do first, well, I'm sort of making you do it first, is the linguistic narrative invention activity. Here's what it looks like. It's called a quiz, but again, it's just giving you points for thinking through some of these ideas. So when I say which example narrative was your favorite, now look at the camera too. For people who aren't here, I'm talking to you too. Which example narrative was your favorite? What I mean by example narrative is, if I go to the, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to go back there. My bad, you guys. When I mean example narrative, I mean go home, go to course materials, or go to Pages course materials, and you can, like I said to Hiro at the beginning, I have different other stories from A Map is Only One Story. That's the book that this story we read today comes from. I only have the audio files. I've recorded myself for a different class. I made them by the book and we read the whole book. But I did record myself, reading them. So if you want to listen to me reading some of the narratives, you can listen to that. Then I still have the narrative writing examples in PDF. That's mother tongue, anthropology of myself, how to tame a wild tongue, the story that we just read. I've got all these PDFs. So when I ask you in the invention activity to tell me which example narrative was your favorite, you know, I'm not telling you read 5, read 3, read 2, read 1. I mean, you can read as many as you want to and have time for. But when I say which was your favorite, you got to give me one from this material, from these materials, okay? So, and when you type your answer, there's no word count. Just tell me which one, you know, the name of it. Why was the narrative? Again, 50 words, super short. Just tell me why. No right or wrong answer. In your opinion, what was the theme? Now, this is where it gets a little more fun, right? Like in 50 words, so I don't need you to write a whole paragraph even. What do you think the theme of that essay was? And quote and cite at least one sentence. So Gazwan did that. He quoted the line, "I'm learning how to mourn things before they're gone." I love it. So if you love that line or from any of the things you read or listen to, put that here, right? When you're describing why you think that that is the theme of the essay. 4, more paraphrase practice. I think it's just valuable. Paraphrase a part of the narrative. So what I'm asking you to do is paraphrase one of the stories, right? How would you paraphrase the story of Jamila going to visit her grandmother in Somalia, right? Like, how would you paraphrase that in your own words? Now we're getting to think about the assignment here, right? Because for the writing assignment, and I know we talked about this last time too, but I'm asking you to, when you go to write the assignment, it's due in 2 weeks, I'm asking you to write a linguistic narrative. So this should include all of the elements, structure of narratives as discussed and reviewed in class. Now I'm sort of giving you a menu of themes to choose from for this one, you guys. So I'm not letting you choose your own theme. I want you to talk about one of the themes that we spent 3 weeks looking at from Why Translation Matters. So these themes, these ideas, these ideologies from Grossman's book, I want you to choose one of these as the theme for your essay. So whatever story you end up telling about yourself or a person in your family or whatever, I want the theme to be one of these things from Grossman's book. So when I ask in this question, which theme from Why Translation Matters will you write about in your linguistic narrative? For the answer to this question, all you have to do is copy and paste the one that you want to use.
Only one mail can we use to ideology?
Sure, go for it. I mean, go big, Osama. That's fine. At least one. That's fine with me. At least one. Then same thing, question 6. Why did you choose this theme? Same thing, 50 words. Don't stress too much. It's just me forcing you to think about what you will write before you start to write. Question 7, do you have a personal story that directly connects to this theme? If the answer is no, do not pick that theme. So I'll tell you right now, the only right answer to question 7 is yes. 8, briefly describe the story. Again, I'm making you sort of start to think about how you'll tell this story. And then the only longer one, how do you think this story is connected to your theme? Again, you guys, if you write 50 words for the question in 100 words, you're gonna get the full 10 points. This is not about right or wrong. This is just a chance for you to practice writing about all of the big ideas that we just introduced today. Okay? That's what
I have a question.
Please, Hiro, go for it.
Can you go back to question 4, please?
Sure.
So, so this narrative writing from the essay, paraphrasing, right? Yeah. So this means taking this example, what we just read today, you're talking about one small story we found, not the whole story. Not okay, good. Okay.
And no, I think that'd be almost impossible in only 50 words. You know what I mean?
Right,
And actually, I should edit this to say, I don't want you guys to save your words for your essay. That's why I said 50 words here and there. I'm not trying to kill you by making you write a lot. I am just trying to give you points by forcing you to think about what you will write before you open a Word document and start writing. That's my intention here.
So if you go to the last question,
sure.
You use again the word story. This story is then, but the whole my essay. I have to summarize it.
Basically, yeah, or what will become one part of it here. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, this is the beautiful thing about pre-writing and invention activities like this is maybe what you write for question 9 doesn't even end up in your final essay. That's fine, you know, but like I'm a big believer in pre-writing strategies. that help activate your brain to think about these ideas. So you're not locking yourself into this when you do this activity. I've said it 3 times now, but it's just me forcing you to think about what you're going to write before you write.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Other questions?
Yeah.
Usama?
The object of the essay, is it about our experiment?
Let someone else answer that. Hey, you guys, is this essay about your experience? You're always nodding. Yes, it is, Usama. So because, that's a great question though, because this can be very personal stuff, do not write about anything you don't want to write about, okay? This is not for me forcing you to share details of your life you don't want to write about, okay? So you can share whatever you want. And some students have said before, ooh, this is a little difficult. Can I write about something that a person I know or my family member experienced? If that's what you need to do to feel safe doing this assignment, that's totally fine with me, right? But the idea is, yeah, it's a personal narrative. It's a personal experience. Natalia, I see your hand. What's up?
Yeah, I put almost the same question on the chart. So can it be like the fiction hero and we write using I pronoun? Not just the real story, but if I make up the story with the fiction hero?
Don't know. The answer is no. Don't make up a fictional story. I mean, it has to be something that happened to someone. If you don't want to write about yourself, I understand. So if you want to take a story that you know from a family member or a friend and make it a pronoun I, that is fine with me. But I don't want you to make up a story. That is not this genre. That is not this genre. I hate saying no to you guys. Other questions?
Professor,
Tell me how.
about this one, the one on the screen, you said choose one and talk about. Like, I'm lost. You showed like sounds of you, and
Go back and rewatch this video, Hala. I explained it. If it's not clear, go back and rewatch the video. So question 9 is about what you will write about for your essay. These questions up here are about these examples that I want you to read, right? So again, go back. That's the beautiful thing I love about doing this online. Rewatch the last 5 minutes of this video and it will be clear.
So how long we have for this quiz, Professor?
You have 1 week from today.
No. When we open it, and so for example, can we work, for example, 10 minutes, then close it and back, and so.
Oh yeah. There's no time limit on these type of quiz. It's a quiz because it's the easiest way for me to give you the.
Yeah, because we can do, for example, 1 slide for today and maybe 2 slides for tomorrow.
Fine with me. And Fada, I'm going to keep taking questions, but Fada's helping me connect to. So if you're thinking, Jeff, what am I supposed to do between now and Wednesday? Go to the course materials page and start reading, start listening. Again, I'm not telling you to read all of them. If you want to go crazy, read them all. If you want to start with one and you want to focus on that one for the invention activity, that's fine too. But start reading, choose one and start reading. Choose one of these and start listening. That's totally fine. And once you feel like you understand and you got some more practice with the structure that we just talked about today, then you can open the invention activity and start to apply some of those ideas. Other questions? Gazwan?
Oh yeah, Professor. Actually, I told you already. I sent it my so I'm not really sure. Can you please give me your opinion, or just delete it and I will send it on to your email?
Just delete it. Yeah. Oh, the last thing I want to say, I know we're over time, so if you got to go. You can always watch the video anytime. I want to be respectful of your time. Because I'm not going to give you a lot of other lessons to do for the next 2 weeks. So I would love for you to email me, text me, call me. Let's do office hours. Let's talk about it. You know, I think that's how magic really happens when we're doing this type of writing. So Gazwan, don't worry about that one. Maybe I'll delete it, or if you want if you want me to look at it and tell you what I see and think, but hopefully it's more clear what I want after this class today. So maybe you keep some of those ideas and change some others. You know what I mean? So
yeah, please. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I just want to see I'm on the right track or not.
Okay.
Just take a look and let me know so I can redo it.
Do this so I remember. Email me and just say, if you just email me and say, look at it, that's enough. That's enough. I can do that. Okay. But if you don't email me, I might forget that it's in Canvas.
I will email you in 2 minutes when you finish.
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay. Anybody else? Cool. Well, thank you all for a beautiful class. I loved reading the story for you, and I loved hearing all of your thoughts about it. And even if you're still not sure what you're going to write, that's fine. We've got 2 weeks, and I promise we'll get even more practice with this next week. Cool?
And we love your narrative.
Just speak for yourself, Osama. Maybe, I don't know if everybody else does, but I'll take the compliment from you. Thank you, Osama.
Everybody does.
I hope so. I'm really enjoying this class. I'm really enjoying working with all of you. So I hope you are all enjoying it too. I know Osama's very kind, so thank you. Anybody else? Otherwise, we're done. We're 5 minutes late. I got to let you go. If you need anything, I'll stay around for another few minutes, but otherwise, get out of here. Go. I'll see you guys in a week.
Have a great day, Professor, and everybody.
You too, Ahmed. Thank you.
Have a nice week.
You too, Osama. Oh, Hala, I want to send you this link.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to send it in the chat. If you look at the chat right now, I'm going to stop sharing. There, it's long, but it might take your time, but it looks like there's some good information about troubleshooting or fixing sound problems in Zoom. So maybe bookmark that page and you can go back to it later if you need it.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully it works.
When you close the Zoom, I guess these chats are not working, Professor.
They do, yeah. Once the chat goes away, the chat goes away at the end. You're right.
Yeah.
I'll keep this link though in case other people need it. Anybody else? Any other?
Thank you, Professor, for today's class.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed it really. And the story was amazing. I think that was the real good example from the narrative. So I understood everything. Thank you so much.
If you like that, I think you'll like the other ones too. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, Natalia.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. One. Fada, you got anything else?
Bye. No, thank you very much, Professor. Bye.
Thank you, Fada.
Bye-bye.
Bye.